Hello everybody, I'm Callum at Repair Wins, and in the video today I'm taking a look at a 26-year-old HP e-vectra computer. I did a lot of digging on these before I started recording. They were designed to be basically highly reliable, cheap to roll out business desktops that once they were installed in the office they just stayed there. You didn't have to fiddle with them and maintain them, and you weren't being expected to take the towers apart and so on. It's quite surprising to me that this thing is still in existence, because normally a box like this would have been sent to e-waste 10 years ago, if not longer. I mean, how many of you are really keeping 16-year-old computers about? Never mind 26-year-old computers about. But that's where I got it from. I got it from a local business. It had basically been sat in a cupboard. I was disposing of some other goods for them, and they said that pretty much this thing was going to waste. Did I want it? So I decided to say yes to them. I don't even know if it works. One quirk of the machine is that for some reason it's got a set of keys hanging out the back of it. Don't ask me why. I suppose it was designed to keep it more secure. Anyway, it came with Windows 2000. Yep, you can shudder along if you want. And an Intel Pentium 3 processor, which means it's the higher spec version. You know. If the RAM hasn't been upgraded, it's got 256 megs of DDR. I believe it has a 20GB IDE hard drive. The question I want to answer in this video is, what can you do with such an old computer? The internet reckons I can use it for emulation, for basically note-taking and word processing. AI recommended I use it as a file server. I was like, yeah, good idea. Let me just run a Samba server on an IDE hard drive and a 100 megabit network connection. God, what a waste of time. Seriously though, I want to know what the computer can do, but before that we need to test it. I don't even know if the thing works. For all I know, every single capacitor is bulging because it was built around the time of the capacitor plague. So how about I stop rambling, we'll get it plugged in, we'll see if it switches on and gives us a display. I'll be quite surprised if it does, to be honest. If it doesn't, we'll get it repaired, and then we'll see about using it for something. Before I plug it in, I'm fairly sure this computer's been sat for a very long time. If the capacitors have bulged and leaked acid on the board, it's really not a good idea to switch it on and run it. So I'm going to use the keys. I'm going to open it up. I should just be able to pull the hard drive out. I mean, I don't know how much force to use. Does it go to this way, perhaps? Oh, look, it lifts up. Ah, that's very handy. Okay, and then I'll unplug it on the hard drive side, I suppose, instead of the motherboard side, because they've given me this convenient cable. Oh, Molex on a hard drive. Now we are going back. You know, I might actually be able to use this computer for wiping old desktop hard drives. 15.3 gigs. I've never seen something of that size, but right, there we go then. Let's put that out of the way. I'll just unplug this cable. I'm sure it's going to like being unplugged. There we go. Molex, let's unplug the CD-ROM, which I'm quite surprised to see that this computer actually has. It's not terribly intuitive, but with the help of the internet, I figured it out. So you take the two screws out like I did, and then the entire front of the PC slides off. There we go. So I should be able to lift this top piece off. Nothing's attached to it. This PC probably hasn't been used that much, because while the fan's dusty, I've seen stuff that's 10 times worse. So I'm a bit further into the machine now. They say toolless design. Oh wow, look at that. That's quite clever. Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, I quite like this machine. Having a quick look through the side, there's nothing really wrong with the capacitors or anything. I could probably plug this in and switch it on, but we've opened it this far, we may as well go the rest of the way. Look at what they've done. They just put the RAM socket on sideways. That's absolutely ingenious. Does it tell me? Yeah, 256 megs of RAM. Apparently that's what these machines cap out at, so God, I got the tricked out spec here. Pentium 3 and maxed out RAM. And yeah, mine looks the same as the one in the photos. That's good. So let's unplug the fan. Let's unplug the front panel. And then, can I now wiggle this free? Yeah, there we go. So that's free now. I was in the process of putting this back together. And can you see the capacitor that's bulging? I'm going to point it out. It's that one. If you notice, the top is ever so slightly conical, whereas this is flat and all the others are flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this cap here, and I'm going to replace the one next to it. I was in the middle of editing this video when I realised that the audio quality, and then even worse, the video quality of the scenes where I was removing the capacitors was really poor. So I've decided to just use this standing board from a computer monitor power supply. I'll remove these two capacitors here, and then I'll put them back, because that's going to give you a pretty good idea of the work that I actually did. There's two methods you can use for removing capacitors. The first one is to just use a desoldering pump, and then the second one, which is the one I'm going to show off, is to use pretty much heat, solder wick, flux, and a little bit of patience. And the reason why I'm doing it like that is that most people don't have a desoldering pump at home, but the sort of people who are watching these videos probably have access to some cheap solder and a soldering iron. Anyway then, I've got my soldering iron switched on. It's at 360 degrees. I'm just going to add some fresh solder to the pins, because adding fresh solder allows it to flow more easily. It does sometimes take a few seconds for the solder to begin flowing because most of these boards have really thick ground planes. It's important to just be patient though, because some people turn the temperature of their stations up really high and you can end up causing damage if you do that. But anyway, I'm flowing the fresh solder in, and then what I'm going to do is pretty much grab the capacitor from beneath and just push it to the left and push it to the right with my finger. So I'm going to push it to the left, and then to the right, and then back to the left, back to the right, and then once more. There you go, capacitor's fallen off. That was really simple. So I'm just going to do the same thing with the other capacitor. There we are, they're both removed. And now that they're removed, I'm just going to use some solder wick, which is this stuff right here. It's nice and cheap, although I buy a quality brand, which is obviously a bit more expensive. But I'm just going to put the solder wick on, and as the name implies, it's going to wick away the old solder. Now, the reason why I like this Goot Wick stuff is because basically it works really, really well, and it doesn't cost that much more than a cheap solder wick. Alright, that has almost worked. There we are. Oh, no, okay, so I ended up refilling one of them. Brilliant, those holes are now free of solder. So what we can do is reinstall the capacitors. So I've obviously got cap number 1 here. Cap number 2 has rolled off somewhere. Cap number 2 is here. So just, I mean, in my case it doesn't really matter because this is a scrap board, but just make sure the little stripe on the capacitor is lined up with where the stripes on the motherboard go. So I've got this one that goes here, and the trick that I use, especially if you're using second-hand capacitors, is just to get a blob of solder on the soldering iron, a big blob of solder, and then press it against the pin, and then that way the pin will get stuck in place, and when the pin's stuck in place you can just flow the other side. Here we are then. And just as simple as that. And then this second side obviously needs a little bit more solder, so when the first side's soldered down you can then just obviously take your hands off. Very good, I'll just let that flow. A bit more just to be safe. There we are, that's cap number 1. There we are then, that's cap number 1 and cap number 2 soldered in. If I show you the solder joints on the back, they're not absolutely perfect, there's a little bit of burnt flux, but to be honest you can't really avoid that. Either way though, this is the technique I used on the HP, and so after the caps are soldered in, I put the machine back together and the video picks up with me testing it. It's time to give the computer a test. I appreciate it's a bit dark and dingy looking in here, but I'm filming this fairly late at night. Right, we've got a power LED, but does it actually... VGA is plugged into the computer and into the monitor, by the way, and the monitor's switched on. Doesn't look like we got a display output. Oh, no, okay, I spoke too soon. There you go. HP Invent, and you can see the lines. Oh, in the real world, I could see lines there from the fact it was a VGA signal. But there you go, look at that. I'll tell you what, that BIOS looks very modern for such an old PC. Giving me a keyboard error, mouse isn't responding, obviously because there's no mouse plugged in. I'm going to guess the third error is a date and time error. But yeah, there you are, 26-year-old machine, 2 capacitors replaced, now it's up and running. So let's hit F2 for setup, which by the way, it's F10 on a modern HP. And we'll do a look. So it reckons it's March 1st, 1999. I assume this thing is year 2000 compliant. Right, there we are. So boot device USB is enabled. There's no spare USB ports because I have the mouse and keyboard plugged into the 2 of them. I'm going to leave the rest of the options at the defaults. Wait, is that really it? Is that all I've got? A one-page BIOS? Never seen that before. Incorporated into the latest processors, such as the Pentium 3. Well, lucky me, because I've got a Pentium 3. It has no effect on Celeron or Pentium 2 processors. Identifying his or her system. How strange. Let's hit F10. Let's save the current settings. My God, I've pressed F1 to boot. Yeah, there you go, F1 to boot. So it doesn't like my modern mouse. Windows 2000 is booting. God, this is one of the worst operating systems in history. Almost as bad as Windows 11. And I can attest, I've never seen this startup page before. Like I say, the OS is older than I am. Why would I ever have used a computer that runs it? I think the first PC I used ran Windows XP. We didn't know what we had, did we? The computer asked me to press Ctrl-Alt-Delete to log in, so I did. And then when I did, I was very surprised to see that it's using domain login. Now remember, this is Windows 2000, you know? I didn't think they could do that back in 2000 with domain login. The point is, I obviously can't log into this machine because it's tied to Brita X domain. So is that the company that makes those water filters? Possibly. Either way, I don't have access to that domain, and the truth is, nobody does, because it's probably been switched off for the last 15 years. The point is, I can't go any further with Windows. I could always wipe it and do a fresh install, but I can hardly see the point. We wanted to see what this computer can do in 2026. So we're going to put a modern Linux operating system on there, and then we're going to go from there, really. So the plan is to switch the machine off, boot it off of that USB drive down there, we'll boot it into NTX, and then when it's booted, we can wipe this and do a fresh install. This is the software we're going to be running. So I run MX Linux on one of my old laptops, but the internet kept recommending NTX, so I was like, right, I'll give NTX a go then. So I'm downloading the full 32-bit version. I've hit download. It's obviously appeared on the PC. I'm going to put it on a USB drive and pretty much start the process of installing it on this computer. I've tried quite a few different things to get it to boot from a USB drive. I obviously switched to a smaller USB drive. I tried Rufus. I ended up using Linux to try and write the ISO directly. And I just can't get it to work. Now, in the BIOS, it mentions USB support, but my drive is 16 gigs, and chances are this computer wants one up to 2 gigs and no bigger. So I don't have any small USB drives, and I'd rather not go out and buy one. But then again, I'm going to have to go and buy some CDs, and then find a way to burn a CD, because my computer doesn't have a CD drive, funnily enough, and then only after burning a CD, like it's the early 2000s or something, will I then be able to boot this thing into Linux. I'm currently in the process of burning my ISO to a CD that says DVD drive, and it is a DVD drive, but basically I bought a pack of CDs online really cheaply, and you know, I'm having to burn a CD for the first time in many, many years. I think the last time I burned a CD was to install Windows 8.1, maybe in 2017 or something. Check this keyboard out. PS2 connector, which is very handy. Lovely, so that's plugged in. And then the actual keyboard itself. Da-da-da-da! Turn of the century compact. Oh, and by the way, that's a backspace. And that's a spacebar. Don't ask me why. I wouldn't have designed it like that. I would have designed it like this. I forgot how long this stuff takes. This is going to boot, but it's probably going to take half an hour. But check it out, we're booting a modern operating system, because modern means 2014. In all seriousness, I think this version of Linux is newer. But, oh god, error setting up graphics boot. Start a system type, one of the label names below. So, look, 21st of March 2026. My god, it's only April now. Let's just type in live, I guess. I mean, why not? Live. I've hit enter, and a good way to check if your computer's still working, by the way, is caps lock. If you press caps lock and it responds instantly, your computer's okay. It's just taking ages to boot, that's all. But we can't really be surprised. I think 256 megs of RAM and a Pentium 3, if I remember correctly. And this is booting off of a CD, but there you go. And you know, the laser looked really good inside the CD drive. I'll bet it was never used. I've got to say, it's a lot easier to install an operating system these days. If I wanted to install, let's say, Cache OS, I'd probably only have to interact with the keyboard just to type my username and the password, and a couple of other minor things, but here, I'm having to manually create partitions and stuff. So I've just typed yes in, I'm going to hit enter. The data on the disk is officially gone. I'm now going to hit quit. I'm going to hit Control and C, and then I'm going to restart the installer, and then fingers crossed. Right, see, this looks good. File system and label, there aren't any of those, but that's okay. Let's hit N, and then root partition should be SDA1. And then separate home partition, no I don't. Reserve the data in the home directory. Well, no, because I've just wiped the disk. And then fingers crossed, that's basically going to carry on. It's happy with the tweaks that I've made. Oh, here we go. The installer is going to delete the data. Let's tell it to delete the data. I said no to the 2 things that came up, and then I've told it yes, I want to do the install. And loads and loads and loads of errors instantly. No space left on device. Looks like I'm probably going to be restarting this. I think I've made some progress. I've just run the installer again. There was no point letting it try and complete the entire thing because it obviously wasn't going to work. Last time it didn't ask me about available file systems and whatnot, so I've just told it to format to ext4 because that's the standard that we use these days. We're not running the net version and I don't want to install packages. We're not getting any errors this time, so I think we've struck gold here. Or well, maybe we haven't struck gold, but you know, I think it is working. Here we go, the installation is finished. So all I need to do is type in reboot, we'll hit OK, and here we go. There's no reason why I should be so surprised, but I am. It's actually booting an operating system, so well done to the CD drive. 26 years old, still going strong apparently. I'm well done to this computer for somehow not catching fire yet. We're booted into the OS, and I've told it to do its updates. It's done the updates, so now I'm just getting it to do the upgrades. Anyway, once all the stuff is installed, I'm going to install a desktop environment or a window manager, something like that, so I can actually click around the place using a mouse, as well as just typing in terminal commands, because it's quite a pain having to navigate around the OS using just a keyboard. The upgrades went without a hitch, so now I'm installing IceWM, which is the window manager that's used by AntiX by default. So I install it, I then run a command called startx, and the theory is it loads the window manager, so fingers crossed that actually works for me. So I've got my fingers crossed that it just gives me a usable environment, and then we can actually mess around with the operating system. But you might be able to see that this isn't something for the faint of heart. Quite a lot of tinkering that needs to be done before we can end up with a usable system. I've got a shell, but it isn't exactly usable. It is alive, and the good old caps lock and numlock tests are lighting up as well. I mean, it's kind of working. Let's try rebooting. It took a bit of trial and error, but I managed to get there, so I now have this working, and furthermore I can use my mouse. Either way, you can see that I've now got a working system. It's not perfect, like the boxes aren't loading and stuff, but I've used computers for long enough to know where these things go. Alright, clearly the resolution is too low, it's not really usable, but I'm happy because I've got something that can actually be, used. I've just installed the graphics driver, so obviously it's much easier on a modern machine. On a modern machine you would just go to the website, run the install, or possibly it would even just download it for you. But I've got an Intel i8-10 graphics chip, and that's the drive that I need. So you can see here I've run a command that's installed it, and now I just need to go into my, I think I go here, and then I'm going to make some tweaks inside this file, and then the theory is the next time I run startx, this won't look terrible. I've installed the graphics driver, restarted the machine, I've typed in the command startx, and all I have to do is press enter. It'll take a moment or two, but it'll load, and then it'll put us back into the same interface we were just in. And there you go, now you can see it's loaded, you can see the mouse moves around, I can right click, and more importantly, look how sharp the text is and how good it looks. So if I hit terminal, and then the terminal is going to fill up the screen, it looks decent. I think I can double click to expand it. I mean, the delay there was palpable, but remember, this is a one-core, one-thread CPU. Either way though, if I type in some text, I'll just hold the L key down. I think I should be able to press Ctrl+ to make it larger. It turns out it wasn't the plus key, it was actually that I had to hold Control down and then hold right-click, and I could make the font bigger like that. Anyway then, there's lots of things you can do with an old computer like this. You could use it, you could install DOS and then use it to play DOS games. Because if you've tried to play DOS games, you'll know that it doesn't always work properly inside DOSBox. You can use it for writing, you could use it for emulation, so sort of think, the SNES, possibly the Sega Mega Drive, and then obviously all the machines older than that. You could also use it for legacy development, so let's say you've got some really old equipment that you need to maintain. You could use this as a box to develop code for it. What I'm going to use it for is writing, so I've decided that I want to make a blog post to accompany each video. And to do that, I can install an app called Featherpad, which admittedly I've already done, but I'm just showing you the process. So sudo apt install Featherpad, type the password in. That's probably going to tell me I've already got it installed. Either way though, I can install Featherpad, and then now that I've got this nice GUI environment that I can navigate, I'll just use the mouse, choose IceWM, And then I'll find FeatherPad in here, and obviously once I've found it, I'll launch it. Ironically, I couldn't easily find it, so I thought I'd best just type it in and hit enter. So that's going to then load FeatherPad. And having a machine like this to do work such as writing is really good, because it means you're not going to get distracted. I mean, there aren't going to be any notifications pinging off on this, there won't be emails coming in and so on. There we are then. I spent a few minutes doing some thinking and I came up with this. Think Center Xeon mod, and I'm obviously not going to sit here and read the entire thing out. If you'd like to read it, it's going to end up being a blog post on my website. But that was actually really quite nice, and this is the wonderful keyboard I'm going to be using for typing. Definitely quality, isn't it? Either way though, I'm not going to bother messing with the size of the font or anything like that, because I'm going to be typing this in my living room on a much older monitor that's a much lower resolution, and because it's a lower resolution the text will look bigger. But what I am going to do in the meantime is just save the file. So that's just your standard Control S, like always. It's going to bring it up here, and I'm just going to call it xeon.txt, txt, because I've only got one freehand. So I hit enter, and that's now called xeon.txt, and you can see up there it's been named as well. So obviously, let's say I had a bunch of different files, and I wanted to open it. Same as you always would, you just do file open, and you navigate right there. What I might do though is connect this computer to my main network server. So if I was to close FeatherPad, I think I can do sudo apt install nfs common. And what that's going to allow me to do is connect to my NAS. So instead of relying on this ancient hard drive, I'm obviously going to be relying on this, my NAS with its modern hard drives and the fact that it's all backed up and it's redundant and whatever. Plus it'll be much easier to access it if everything's just saved onto the NAS, because I can obviously just log in on my main PC here and then push it straight to the website after making a few tweaks. I did a bit of research, and as far as I can see, PCman File Manager appears to be the best file manager for basically really old rubbish computers. Seriously though, I can't recommend enough that basically you get proficient with the Linux terminal. You don't need to know every single command there is and whatnot, but being able to Google something and then knowing where to type the command in and how to correct the errors when something happens is really, really helpful. PCman is installed. All I've done is typed in PCman FM. I've hit enter. Don't worry about the rest of the stuff in the terminal, that's just things that happens in the background. So I can double click. File manager is now full size, and I've got the original xeon.txt, which I can right click and then delete. The next thing I want to do is make StartX run automatically every time I log the computer in, because having to type in this every time and then press enter and then wait a good long while for it to load, that's fairly annoying. So wouldn't it be nice if it would do it for me? Isn't it handy I have FeatherPad installed? Instead of having to use Nano, I was able to open my .profile right here. I've got this code down here that starts right what I'm pointing at, and I won't explain the code because I don't really know what it does myself. All I do know is that if I close this program now, I can right click, I can log out. That'll take me back to the main window. I'll log out there as well. And when I log back in with my username, Callum, and then my incredibly secure password, and hit enter, with any luck, that'll run StartX for me. Ooh, here we go. This might actually work. Hey, look at that. Brilliant. That has done that for me. So now, when I turn the computer off, I'm going to log it back in every time, and it's just going to take me straight here. This is really cool. Right then, that's nice. The other two things that I want are for FeatherPad and the file manager to be on my desktop. It might not be possible. I'll set off having them on the taskbar, and if I really have to, as long as they're accessible within this list of applications, it'll be okay. Desktop icons are apparently an absolute pain, but it's supposedly quite simple to put what I want down in this little context menu here. So if I click here, apparently I can just put PCman FM and FeatherPad there, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. The way that you do that then is you go to this folder here, you open a file called menu, and then you just put the name of the applications that you want in here. I've done that, FeatherPad, PCman FM. So the theory is I just log out, I log back in, and then in this bottom menu my program should show. I've just run StartX. Gonna let it load. We'll go down to the bottom left, click the button. Oh, there we go. So we've got FeatherPad. As for the other one, we don't. So if I click Windows, log out, we've not got any file manager for some reason, but we've got FeatherPad, so that's nice. Chances are I just made a mistake, although conveniently FeatherPad is the one that shows. So I'll just go back to my IceWM menu. I'm just going to make, I've called it PMan versus PCman. And there we are, look at that. Featherpad, PC Man FM. The two apps I actually care about, and they're both showing there just as I want them to. I've gotten this computer to a place where I'm really happy with it. Obviously I have Featherpad installed, I've got a file manager installed, and as I've already said, I'm going to use it to write my blog posts. The point is though, there's plenty of other things you could use a computer like this for. For example, you could use it as a music server with a program called Music Player Daemon. I've gone away and done some digging, and it would work fine on a Pentium 3 and 256 megs of RAM. So what you would do is you would take your totally legal MP3s that you didn't rip from Spotify, and then you would put them into a folder, and I'm obviously boiling it down a bit, but the idea is this computer would play the music and you would control it with your phone or with another computer. So you can look into Music Player Daemon if that sounds of interest. I'll go to the bottom. You could use it as a serial terminal or an SSH machine. Realistically, most people aren't going to do that because, you know, you could also use a newer computer to do the same thing. But it was very handy to be able to SSH into one of my servers earlier to grab a couple of configuration files that I needed. You could use it to support legacy programs. So say you've got some really old code that just doesn't do well with emulation, or maybe, like me, you want to work in a period correct environment. You could basically use this computer to run prehistoric versions of C, or Python, or I don't know, COBOL or Fortran if you're into that. I think most people though are going to be interested in emulation, because you can emulate old arcade games with MAME, such as Pac-Man or Donkey Kong, Galaga, Frogger, Puzzle Bobble, and other sort of early games. You won't get away with the new stuff, so you know when you go to the arcade and there's those racing simulators, you probably couldn't do that. But I'm actually going to try and make Puzzle Bobble work in a little bit because it's one of my favourite games, and it'd be really cool to see this computer displaying something that isn't a blinking cursor. Otherwise, you could just do it for old games consoles like the Atari 2600 or the ColecoVision. You could emulate computers like the Spectrum and the Commodore 64. Otherwise, though, it's the NES and the SNES, the Master System, the Mega Drive, the Game Boy. Similar machines, you know, machines sort of like that. You couldn't get away with the PS1 or the PSP or anything sort of, you know, built within the last 25 years. But there's still a huge amount of games available for these old systems. And while someone might hear the specs and laugh, as long as you're able to get use out of the computer, it hardly matters. So then, how can I go about playing Puzzle Bobble? Well, the first thing to do is to install MAME using this command here. Now that MAME's installed, I'm going to create a folder for my ROMs. I've downloaded my ROM to a USB drive. I've put that USB drive into this computer's only spare USB port, and then I've mounted that USB drive to this folder here. So I double click the folder, wait for it to open because we're using every last bit of RAM this computer has. I'm going to right click pbobble, I'm going to copy it back to my home folder. We will open MAME when I can find it. Now that I've found MAME, I go to ROMs and I just paste it in. Apparently all that's left to do now is just run this command and the game launches. I'm very doubtful personally, but let's see. No, unexpectedly it didn't work. I'm not going to make you sit here and watch me spend the next 2 hours trying to sort all of these problems out. I think I'm just going to sort them and come back when I have a working product to show you. It turns out that all I did wrong was I put a lambda in front of the word MAME. So instead of it just saying MAME, it had that little sort of squiggly symbol there above the hashtag and then the word MAME. That was pretty much all it was. I ran the command again, and this time it has been at 61% for a fairly long time, but I think it's actually working. I almost can't believe it. I might even get a rubbish pair of headphones just to plug in and see if I can hear this. The game did run, but it was absolutely crawling. You can see there it was only running at 1.26% speed. Obviously it needs to be running at 100% speed. I mean, the odd frame drop or the odd dip occasionally is acceptable, well that's clearly not. Anyway then, I think I was a bit naive to try and run the latest and greatest version of MAME on this computer. What I'm going to do is uninstall the MAME that I put on here, after making sure I back up the ROM, and then I'm going to install a much older version that's a better fit for this hardware. I've managed to build MAME 2000 from the source, so doing so spat out a file called MAME 2000 libretro.so, and the theory is I've copied that to a folder called basically RetroArch cores. The idea is that I install RetroArch and then I can boot that core. An unbelievable amount of effort was required to get here, but the game is now running. You can see I've got MAME 2000 and I've got a really old version of RetroArch as well. To be honest though, it's running at like 5% of what it should be, so it's clearly not playable. You see how long it stayed on that menu? And you see how slowly the coins or the bubbles or whatever it is are coming in from the side. So obviously that's no good. I'm hoping I can do some things to speed it up. That looks a little bit more like it, I think. That is running at the speed I expect it to be running at. Very nice. I'm going to find some speakers. I'm going to plug those in. Just before I do, I'm going to make a couple small changes to the config, but I think we've finally gotten somewhere with this. Failed to start audio driver. Environment unsupported. Will continue without audio. I think the audio driver one came up before the environment one, so I'm probably not using the right audio driver. Let's try again. Ooh, listen to that. Oh, right, I've never actually heard that noise before. That's rather loud. Who cares? Let's put a coin in. 5. Okay, this is very loud. Start button. What is the start button again? Enter? Enter. Oh, this is charming, isn't it? Right, so, oh god, I've got to click buttons. It's going to be... And then control, right? Okay, that's done it for me. I'll hit control. Booyah! We are playing Puzzle Bobble, people. This is actually quite nice. Now, no doubt the first level's really, really easy and I'm just useless. Remember, I'm doing this one-handed navigating between keys, but there we are. There's level 1 complete. And look how well it's running, more importantly. Remember, this computer's older than I am, and the game I'm emulating is only sort of 6 years older than it. Ah, you see what I tried to do there, right? Right, I'm obviously not going to sit here and play this for very long because, well, I'm not going to do it very well. Oh, here we go, look. If I can do this properly. Bam! That's how you do that. Look at all those points I earned. Clearly they're pleased with me. Let's play one more round. I'm sure this game could probably be running slightly better if I was running MAME directly and I wasn't using RetroArch and so on, but naturally I don't have 3 days to work all of that out. I want to use a computer to write a blog post, and I just wanted to demonstrate what's possible with a box like this, if you're willing to put the work in. A bit more. There we go. See, when you're using a keyboard, though, you can only get so many levels of adjustment. That's why I'd like to be using the mouse if I could. But then again, that quality mouse right there is probably even worse than the keyboard for modifying this stuff. Oh well, let's call it a day there. The last thing I'd like to do with this PC is put a nice Repair Wins sticker on it. Before I can put the Repair Wins sticker on there, I just need to clean off the remnants of this old PAT sticker here. The best way I've found to do that is just to use 99.9% isopropyl alcohol and a piece of kitchen roll. But the first thing you've got to do is scrape off the old sticker residue. So I'm going to do that using one of these blue scraping tools. There we are. Now that I'm done with that, I'm just going to get some alcohol, put it right onto the tissue. Just sort of slowly go back and forth. Right, it obviously doesn't want to be perfect because I don't want to wipe all of the lettering off of this Pentium 3 sticker, and I don't want to get rid of the Windows 2000 sticker either. So now that I've done that, I'm just going to peel my Repair Wins sticker, make sure the area is completely clear, and then set this on the top. I think that's as straight as I can reasonably get it. There we are. I think that looks quite good. There you have it then. To answer the question in the title of the video, a lot, you know, a 26-year-old machine can do a lot of stuff. A Pentium 3 doesn't have the latest encryption standards. It's obviously not hyper-threaded. It's only got a single core. It only supports 256 megs of RAM. But despite all of that, you can use it to emulate old arcade machines. You can use it for taking notes. You can emulate computers that are even older than it. You can use it as a serial terminal or for SSH or to stream music from one computer to another. It turns out you can do quite a lot on these machines. If your house is powered by renewable energy, it doesn't matter that it consumes 15 times more power than a similar machine to do the same sort of thing. I think the only thing less efficient is one of the arcade cabinets that I was trying to emulate. All joking aside though, it is nice to basically prove that these old machines aren't completely useless. You obviously wouldn't use it as your daily PC. You probably wouldn't even use it as a spare. But if you had absolutely no choice and you had to get a document turned out and that thing was sat in the corner, I bet you'd find yourself sat at it typing away in Featherpad, you know, sweating and constantly looking over at the clock. you know, because it can still be used. Anyway then, if you found the video useful, then I ask that you leave it a like. Even better if you could hit the subscribe button. The more subscribers I've got, the more my channel's going to get promoted to other people. That's the theory anyway. And obviously that means more people are going to see the videos. We're going to get the repair message spread further and wider, which is exactly what we want. Because I had someone comment on a video of a palm rest replacement that I uploaded ages ago, pretty much thanking me for it, saying he found it really useful. I took a look into it, and I can't remember the exact country, but it was a couple thousand miles away. And you're just not going to have that sort of each standing in your local town hall preaching gospel, telling people you should be fixing your own devices. But obviously if you put videos on the internet and people watch them, they find them interesting, they share them, then lots of people are going to see it, and we can make a tiny little dent in the market caps of these, you know, conglomerates. And furthermore, you can support pretty much small businesses when you go on eBay or you go on Amazon or wherever it may be, and you buy a fan for your laptop, or you buy a keyboard or a palm rest, or even just a new battery, you know. Thermal paste, I mean, all these things cost a little bit of cash, but you're going to be saving yourself £600 on a new laptop, £500 on a new PlayStation, if you're able to fix these things yourself. And that means basically you've got more money to spend on other sort of stuff, and that's what we all need more of these days, is a little bit more spending money. So why not learn how to fix things and thus put some cash in your own back pocket? Anyway then, that's all I've got time for today. I'm going to get out of here now. I'm quite tired. I've been chipping away at this for a very long time. I'll see you in the next video. Take care for now, and goodbye.